Have you ever wondered after the relationship if the narcissist in your life actually missed you? Actually missed the relationship that you guys had? Actually missed the connection? Maybe you've wondered, is a narcissist capable of experiencing genuine emotion, including missing someone? Missing former partners, fair partners, like partners, whoever it might be? Or is it just simply driven by their own interests? So, I want to talk a little bit about narcissistic abuse. And if you guys are new here, my name is Ben Taylor. I'm a self-aware narcissist on this channel to provide awareness about narcissistic abuse, how it's shown up in my life, how I've exemplified it, how I've done the things that I'm talking about, and how I've worked on changing and developing those, and how we work on changing, developing people that come to us saying, hey, I'm broken because of this, or like, hey, let's work through this so you can actually understand the flip side so you can actually be free. So you can move forward like in your connection, in your growth, healing and change and development in all aspects of your life. Well, the big question, does a narcissist miss me? Like, he broke up with me, I broke up with him. Either way, does he actually miss me? It'd be easy just to come out and say, no, he doesn't miss you. That'd be like probably the easiest way, and we could just wrap up the whole video here. But why? Like, what is the actual reason? Because so often when you start to realize the narcissist isn't missing you, you start to equate that to your value. You start to equate that to your worth. That's the piece that we need to work on understanding and building up. We're not going to have time to dive into that 100% in this video that we have going on here, but I want you to understand that a lot of what is triggering this underneath is your sense of worth or validation going back to a toxic person. So when we talk about narcissists and them actually missing you, the hard part is when it starts to break down. When you start to be like, wait a second, what was real? Was anything real in the whole relationship? Because now it just seems like there's a bunch of lies. And you start to realize a lack of genuine connection. Okay, the lack of genuine connection between you and the toxic person. Narcissists struggle to form any deep, authentic, emotional connections. Why? Because forming those deep, authentic, emotional connections needs to be done with truth and with vulnerability. The things that narcissists want to run away from. Because the truth reveals the shit that's underneath. The vulnerability reveals like the brokenness, the stuff that's happening inside that they don't want to admit. So as a result, it comes out as abuse because they start abusing everybody else by how they're treating them. Narcissists oftentimes will struggle to form these relationships because the inability to actually show up and be truthful. And some people are like, hey, you're on here and you're truthful. Well, that's been a long progress, and it's also been an awakening that I've had in my life. Majority of narcissists don't do that. Majority of narcissists aren't willing to acknowledge the truth of the situation. They're unwilling to acknowledge what's actually happening, what's going on inside of them. That was a big step and a big progression for me that opened up many doors once I started to realize that I was lying to myself. Well, narcissists oftentimes will view you as an extension of themselves. Of like, let me view you as a part of me. Not a part of me as like we're connected and we love each other, but a part of me as like you are my property. You are the thing that I want to be able to have. And so as a result, you see a lot of narcissists that are addicted to the game of the chase, where they're chasing after you time and time and time again. And then when they get you in a relationship and they get you and you're like stuck with them, then they're like, I don't know what to do with you because they haven't actually developed a relationship with you. It's just superficial. It's just this overarching friendship that feels really great because it's full of love bombing, but it doesn't really have any depth to it, okay? Narcissists oftentimes are looking just for that surface level. I'm looking for validation, for admiration, for the stuff that makes me feel good. But getting lower, getting deeper, that's the hard stuff. That's the scary stuff. There is an aspect of there being just the capacity. For a narcissist to actually get genuine connection makes it really, really hard for them to experience like the same level of emotional attachment as you. This is why a narcissist isn't going to be in a trauma bond. Like they're not going to be stuck with the hope and potential of you because at the end of the day, they don't care about you. They don't care about how they're actually showing up. They just care about like what they get out of the relationship. So you need to be able to understand a narcissist a lot of times is looking for this aspect of like, let me connect with someone, but let it be surface level. Like I don't want it to actually be deep. And for me, there's always this fear of actually being able to engage with someone and having them see me. I didn't want to see me, so I definitely didn't want to let anybody else see me. In my progression in learning and understanding and therapy and getting to the truth and going through the lies that I believe, there's been this progression of starting to work on breaking down those barriers even more, of not just being truthful to everybody, but then being vulnerable. One of the hardest people to be vulnerable to on a consistent basis is my wife. of being able to show up and say, hey, this is what's going on. It's a progression, and we've been progressing greatly compared to where we were several years ago. But it is an intentional effort each time of let me actually step forward and be vulnerable in this moment. Majority of narcissists aren't going to do that because they don't actually want to embrace that. For me, I had to start realizing that vulnerability is necessary for change. You can't have any change unless you know where you are. If you're willing to be really, really vulnerable, if this is where I am, then you can start moving forward in your change, into your development. Most people don't want to be vulnerable. So that's the hard part. Sometimes you'll see a narcissist that will mimic the idea of missing someone. Maybe you've broken up and he's calling you nonstop, crying and being like, I miss you so much. And then like 2 days later, he's like raging at you because you left him. Okay. Like this back and forth, this push and pull shows you that it's just a mimic, like shows you it's just a lie going on to try to pretend that it looks a certain way. But oftentimes missing is one of the best ways to be able to hoover you back because you're like, oh, he's engaging with emotion. I haven't seen this. Let me go back to him because something's actually changed when nothing's actually changed. Oftentimes you'll see this being really intermittent of like going back and forth of like reaching out, not reaching out. What happens is this piece is really controlled more by control. Wanting to be able to control you, wanting to be able to control the situation, not because there's this innate desire and longing to miss you because there's no depth there. It hasn't actually been something that is low enough, that is deep enough inside the relationship to form that intense connection. Now, you need to understand, we've talked about so many times that narcissists are motivated by supply, of getting supply reaction from another person, or in the positive, attention, validation, admiration that they can get from other people. Like the focus on actually getting what they want, like you need to meet my needs, rather than actually genuinely missing someone. This is where it's a little bit different. A lot of times a narcissist is not missing you, they're missing what you provide. Narcissist isn't missing you as a person, they're missing what they get out of you. Narcissist isn't missing like you, like in your intrinsic good and worth, because sometimes people believe that. They're missing the transactions they were able to get where they were able to invest a little bit and get a lot out of you. Typically because they were pulling back and you felt crazy and you had to keep reaching out, like all these different things. But the whole idea is narcissists are so focused on meeting their own needs versus actually building a genuine connection, like building an actually deep relationship. So this whole concept of going back and forth is really in self-interest of like, I want you back for this reason. Now, you're going to see this a lot of times in the end of the relationship where the narcissist is like, I'm going to change. Or all of a sudden they get into therapy, they start doing all these things. You're like, this is exactly what I wanted him to do to start off with. He knows that. That's why he's doing it now. Because all the previous manipulations didn't seem to work anymore. So it's like, okay, now what I have to do to actually get to the place where I keep you in my life, where I actually bring you back. So the idea of like missing you, saying I'm going to change, saying all these things are going to be different, it's driven by self-interest. It's like, I want this. How do I get this back? How do I make sure I get this? Any means of missing someone oftentimes serves as a means to get control back and maintain ego. Okay, the huge aspect here is a narcissist doesn't want to look like the bad guy. Like they don't want to look like you actually got away from them and they feel bad about it. Like the guilt or the shame that comes from you rejecting them by leaving, etc. Okay, so a lot of times what you're going to see is a narcissist will reach out to you claiming, hey, I miss you so much. Like I just miss you. I can't live without you. All these different things. What you need to understand is majority of the time it's a manipulative tactic to get control back over you. Now, they normally package it up different. It's not just like, oh, I miss you, let's get back together, because oftentimes you might have already described, called out, or seen toxic behavior. So then you come to the table and be like, hey, that's great that you miss me, but what are you actually going to do about it? Like, how are you actually going to change how you show up on a day-to-day basis? And then you start to see the narcissist changing or quote-unquote modifying certain things in their life, but it's not really long-lasting. What we see is a narcissist that says, hey, I'm going to change. They're normally changing for you. They're normally changing for the relationship, not for long-term change. So as a result, they start changing. You take the relationship off the table and be like, I don't think this is where I'm being led to go. And all of a sudden, all that change reverts. Because a lot of times it's not true change. It's just conforming. It's just getting to a certain spot to make themselves feel better, to look better, to get you back, and to be able to control you ultimately. Yeah, have you gone into this cycle of seeing where the narcissist is like missing you and you think they're missing you and then you get back with them and then it's like all hell breaks loose? It's like this is the same person. Nothing's actually changed. That's because at the end of the day, the narcissist doesn't miss you. The narcissist doesn't care about you. Narcissist cares about what you provide. Narcissist cares about how you make them look. Narcissist cares more about transactionally being on your good side so they can look better to friends and family and even to themselves than they are about actually caring about you. You need to understand, if you're with a narcissist and they're not willing to be honest, vulnerable, and show consistent change, you're not in a relationship. You're with someone who's just using and abusing you, who's manipulating you and trying to get just what they want in the moment. And then it's time to be able to make a stand for you, to actually take back your power, start to move forward in your growth, your healing, and your development. If you want to do that with us at Raw Motivations, we'd love to have you. You can go to escapetoxicity.com. You can start the 7-day challenge to be able to figure out, what do I do next? How do I start moving forward? If you want to work with me one-on-one, you can go to rawmotivations.com. We'd love to have you work with us or join us in our Thriver community, where we have people that are maximizing who they are in all different aspects of life and growing beyond what they've ever hoped and dreamed. Because at that point, they're done with the narcissist, they've started to heal, and they've moved into the growth mindset of where they're going to be in 3 months, where they're going to be in a year. And seeing how we actually accomplish that step by step by step is really incredible. It's really awesome. Anyways, if you want to talk to me sometime, rawmotivation.com. If you want to see what we're about and understand how we start to teach and train you, you can go to escapetoxicity.com. We'd love to be a part of your healing journey.